how to talk to people about veganism and animal rights. What's up? Ryuji here, and I've been an animal rights activist for several months, and my mission in life is to create a world where animals are not exploited. And so this channel is for me to share with you the things that I'm learning along my journey. And what I'm going to share with you today are 3 of the most important things that I personally focus on when I talk to people about veganism and animal rights. I know that one of the biggest struggles that we can face as vegans and animal rights activists is talking to people about these topics, because so often it can seem like people are unreceptive, that they don't care, or perhaps they even shame you, they make fun of you. It's not always a pleasant experience. And trust me, I've been there. I talk to people about this stuff all the time, and I've had many bad conversations. I've also had many great conversations. And so really what I'm going to share with you today are just a few things that I have learned so far. And these tips hopefully will help you whether you're talking to friends and family, whether you're talking to people at an actual outreach event like a Cube of Truth, or if you're just talking to people randomly when you're in line at the grocery store, on a plane, at a bus stop, etc., etc. So, the first thing that I always personally focus on when I talk to people about veganism and animal rights is this idea that I like to call relationship over outreach. And what I mean by that is that every time I talk to people, before I even open my mouth and talk to them about veganism and animal rights, I make sure that I have a good relationship with that person. I make sure that we're friends, in other words. I make sure that I like them, that they like me, that we respect each other, and really I make sure that there's an environment where we can communicate openly with each other. I'll give you a couple examples of how this worked and how this didn't work for me in the past. Just a couple days ago, I was on a plane on the way back to Los Angeles from Dallas, and I was talking to the person next to me. And now, when I first got on the plane, I knew straight away that I wanted to talk to her about veganism or animal rights, because that's just what I do. And so as I sat down, I immediately started talking to her, but instead of trying to get into that topic, I first, sat there, asked her how she was doing, and asked her all about herself. One of the best ways to build relationships with people is to ask questions, listen, and actually care what they talk about. And so I learned everything about her. I learned that she was from Dallas, going to Los Angeles to meet her daughter because her daughter was sick. I learned about the other 3 children that she had, 2 other daughters and 1 son, where they were, what they were doing, etc., etc. Because people generally like to talk about their children, their family, stuff like that. And I really listened, and I really cared. And right now I could tell you exactly what all her children are doing, where they are, etc., etc. I asked her about what she did, her passions, etc., etc. So she really talked to me a lot before I even got into the conversation of animal rights and veganism. To illustrate this point further, there was a point very early in the conversation, perhaps a minute into the conversation, where she asked me what I was doing in Dallas, and I was like, oh, I was actually up here doing some animal rights stuff, but I didn't get too into it because I knew that I didn't have the relationship with her yet to have an effective conversation. So what did I do? I just kind of briefly talked about it, then I went straight back on her, asked her many questions about her, and only when she finally asked me what I was up to, because you'll find that when you ask people a lot about them, they'll at some point ask about you, and they'll generally want to know, because they're like, wow, like, I really told you all this stuff, like, I feel so good about this conversation that we're having, like, what about you? And when she did that, that's when I launched into the outreach conversation. There was another time, in contrast, it was actually when I flew into Texas this time before I flew back. I was in an Uber. It was like 4 in the morning, and I was having an outreach conversation with my Uber driver. And there what happened was that I kind of talked to him, but not really, because I was answering DMs and comments on my phone, so I didn't really make an effort to create a relationship with him. But that being the case, because we got to talking a little bit, at some point we got on the topic of animal rights and veganism. But what I found was that because I didn't spend a lot of time really cultivating a relationship with him, where we were really talking to each other like friends, the conversation, you could argue it went well, but I could tell that the whole time he was kind of listening, but also kind of not listening, kind of into it, but also kind of not into it. And so it really wasn't that effective, and only if I'd spent more time really cultivating a relationship with him to the point where we're really friends and we're calling each other brother and that kind of stuff, I think the conversation could have gone really well. The last thing I want to say about this is that when you really have a strong bond with someone, when you really have a good relationship with someone, you can make many more mistakes in your outreach technique, so to speak, because there are no doubt many techniques, tactics that you can use when you talk to people about veganism and animal rights. A great person who talks about this is my friend Alex Alex Bez. He has a YouTube channel called Amazing Vegan Outreach, so definitely check that out. He goes much more in depth into all these topics. He's a lot better at me than Outreach in my opinion, but he talks about all the tactics, right? And those things work, but if you really develop a relationship with these people, the tactics, yes, they matter, but they matter less. And for example, when you go in to say show someone footage of a factory farm or a slaughterhouse, the more you've built up the relationship with them, the more they're likely to actually accept that. Because when you're actually friends with someone, especially when you just met them, you made a really good effort to actually connect them and actually care. I really want to emphasize, this is not a tactic. You're not asking questions and listening as a tactic. I want you to do this and really care about the other person. That's when it's going to work. But when you actually do that and you ask them, hey, can I show you something? It's very difficult for them to say no, and they might even want to actually see what you're sharing with them because you've created that relationship with them. Alright, now the second thing that I always focus on when I talk to people about veganism and animal rights is I always assume that the person I'm talking to is going to be open. I see so many comments and I get so many messages on Instagram every single day, and I see people and I can tell that the way that they're communicating to me, I can already tell that their worldview is that most people don't care about veganism, don't care about animal rights, and most people are not going to be open to hearing about these topics. What I found is that when I go into a conversation thinking, well, this is probably not going to work, this person is probably not going to care, most people just don't care about this, it tends to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But on the flip side, what I found is that when I go into a conversation and I assume from the get that, hey, you know what, this person is going to be awesome, I'm going to have a great time with this person, they're going to listen to animal rights, veganism, they're going to want to hear about it, they're even going to go vegan by the end of the conversation. And when that's my mindset, that's my assumption, that also tends to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. In life in general, what I found is that people reply to expectations. So if you expect people to act a certain way, then they're gonna act that way. If you talk to people and you're apologetic, you're like, well, you probably don't want to hear about this, but I'm gonna tell you anyways, then they're probably gonna be like, I don't want to hear about this. And then, you know, people act all surprised, but it's like, yo, you created this. So I always assume that people are going to be open. All right, and finally, the third thing that I always focus on when I talk to people about veganism and animal rights is the concept of creating win-win. When I talk to people, I never try to debate people. I never try to argue with people. You know, I always get messages from people who say, my friend said this, how do I win this argument? What do I say to them? How do I respond to this? You know, like, I've been having this debate with this person. What can I say to counter this argument, etc., etc.? And I understand where that comes from, because when we look at a lot of conversations online, you'll see that a lot of people who post outreach conversations, it's often in the form of a debate. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, and I think it works especially well in the context of creating content. So if you're putting out a video on the internet, it might be great to actually have a debate because those are very compelling, people love listening to them, and when you're not invested in the actual conversation, meaning you're watching it from behind a screen or even watching it live, you're not necessarily invested in the conversation, so it's very easy for you to make your own personal decisions on who's right and who's wrong. The problem is, when you're having a one-on-one debate, both parties are generally very invested in their points of view, and they don't want to admit that they're wrong. And so what I found is that it's not an effective way to actually change people and to actually get people to really think about these issues. You know, my friend Alex Bez, for example, he runs a YouTube channel, like I already talked about it, Amazing Vegan Outreach. He talks about how when you have a debate with someone, people are likely to leave that debate being more convinced of their own point of view than having considered a new one. Another thing that he says, he took this quote, I believe, from Blaise Pascal, I can't remember, but he says, you know, people believe what they say, not what they hear. So I never think about, you know, what is it that I want to tell you? What is it that I want to communicate? I always think about, how can I talk to you? How can I ask you questions that's going to get you to think about things that you already care about? How can I create a win-win situation with you where you're pumped to hear this information? That's why when I build a relationship with them, I make an effort to listen to them, because when you listen to someone, you get to know what they actually care about. And when you get to know what someone actually cares about, it's so much easier to have a conversation because you can just gear the conversation towards that instead of what you care about. Always remember, people are not going to go vegan because you want them to go vegan. People are going to go vegan because they want to go vegan. So that being the case, make an effort to create win-win situations. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. That was it. 3 things that I always focus on when I talk to people about veganism and animal rights. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, I made an entire playlist on it, so definitely check it out. I'll link it down below. And another thing that I really suggest you start doing is get involved in your local activism communities. The reason is, if you actually go to an event, say a Cube of Truth organized by Anonymous for the Voiceless, because that's an event that's specifically designed for people to have outreach conversations, you can have a lot of outreach conversations really quickly and learn really fast, because outreach, like anything else in life, is a skill. If you want to learn how to do that, I made an entire playlist also dedicated to the topic of how to become active, so definitely check it out. I'll link it down below. And another resource that I'm going to link down below is the website veganactivism.org. Now that's a really cool resource that my friend David put together, where basically it's a directory of all the different organizations that organize events that you can go to make a difference. What it's going to say is what the organization is, what you can expect, how to get involved, and it links out to the website of the organization so you can find chapters and events near you. And another thing that I love on the website is ideas for what he calls micro activism, and those are just things that you can do in your day-to-day life without going to formal activism events to make a difference. I love those ideas. I started doing them myself, so definitely check that out. I think you'll really enjoy it. In any case, thank you again so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Talk to you soon. If you enjoy this content, by the way, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell too so you get notified when I drop new videos. All right, that was it. Take care and peace.